Good morning, friends. It is the third week of October. We've been in this pandemic a long time now. 9 months? 9 months? It seems like years and seems like a week, both at the same time. This coming week, the lectionary readings are varied, and there's an interesting reading that we're all familiar with where Jesus is challenged saying, what is the greatest commandment? He says, love God, of course, with your whole self. And then he adds, and love your neighbor as yourself, as you would love yourself. The same reading or the same statement, declaration is found in Leviticus, and that's also one of our readings. But there's a separate reading from the end of Deuteronomy that I'd like to address today. And that is the last moments or time of Moses just before he dies. He's taking up to the top of Mount Nebo, and he's given a vision of the entire promised land. And he says, and God says, this is the promised land that's being offered to your people, that I'm giving to the people, my people. But you're not going there. So Moses sees the vision, sees the promise, and then he dies and is buried there in the foreign land, outside the promised land. So what can we say about this? Well, I think in the midst of this pandemic, we're all waiting for the promise of the vaccines to come, and they will help. Of course, they'll be a certain percentage effective, and we'll probably get enough vaccines that we will be able to get enough immunity that we can stop this spread of the virus. So we have that hope. That's the promise that we've been given. And we're waiting for it, right? Will it be January, February, April, June? Who knows? Some will come sooner than others, and they all hold different varieties of degree of effectiveness and methods of effectiveness. So we hold on to that promise in the midst of the wilderness of the pandemic. The interesting thing about Moses, you can imagine just how disappointed he was, right? He led the people out of Egypt, across the wilderness, across a generation or two, right? He's the last of the original people that left Egypt pretty well. And he's not allowed to go in. He doesn't get to go into the promised land. We're waiting for the promise. Not just the vaccine, but think about climate change too, where we're waiting for the new world to come that is healed, that no longer have threats of burning forests and tremendous hurricanes one after another. They're not saying that the hurricanes this season were more intense than in the past, but to have one come hit the same coastline only a week after it just being hit by a hurricane is just horrendous. So there's the hurricanes, the forest fires, the torrential rains in places and floods. It just goes on and on and on. You know the story about the climate change and the impacts. We all had to breathe in that smoke in August and September. It's going to take a long time to heal the earth. And we are in the wilderness for that climate change crisis and also the pandemic. It's going to take time for the pandemic to be removed from our lives such that we're restored to some sort of a new normal. Life will be changed forever. There will be new viruses that come out, a new pandemic. Next year? 5 years from now? 10 years from now? And our culture and society will change and has to change. There is this vision we all have. A vision where medical resources are shared fairly around the world. A vision where folks' food and resources are shared equally around the world in a just way. A vision where families in some impoverished country don't feel this need to have multiple children just so that enough will survive into adulthood to take care of the parents when they're old and elderly. A vision where our forests are safe and managed according to how evolution, creation, our Creator intended. That the diversity of life is no longer threatened. The abundance of, say, the salmon come back. It's a vision, right? It's a hope. And it's a vision and hope that doesn't necessarily come for us, right? We're like Moses in some of these ways, standing on the top of Mount Nebo, looking at the promised land, looking at the vision to come, when the earth is healed and people are safe, medical science is shared well, not kept from some and given to others, where there's a just distribution of all the resources. This is our vision, our hope, right? Like some ancient Old Testament prophet proclaiming from the streets that there must be a change in our culture and society. I mean, we're all there. It's in our hearts. We want it. We yearn for it. It's our vision. But we don't necessarily get to share it. We don't necessarily get to live in the promised land. What we get to do is we get to be a little bit like Moses. We get to be the guides, the leaders, the wisdom givers in the midst of the Exodus, in the midst of the wilderness, in the midst of the chaos, such that we can guide and lead the next generation, the people, the society, the culture into the promised land. And we may be the ones standing on the mountaintop pointing it out. We may not be there. And I'm not talking about because of our age. I'm over 60, right? I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about like even our children may still be part of the call of Moses to point out the promised land rather than to be the fulfillers, right? We're all on a journey of hope. So in the middle of this pandemic, maybe we can learn that lesson, that it's for the future we work. To make today better? Certainly. But it's for the future. Or as the story goes, as I told a few weeks ago, the old man planting the apple trees isn't planting them so that he can enjoy the fruit. It's for those who come after him. And that's what we're called to do. To be Moses leading the people through the wilderness, standing on the mountain and seeing the promise and saying, go forth. Friends, come with me on this journey. Let's heal the world. It's our call. God bless you and watch over you and care for you. Amen.